On this week's episode of the Jesse T Show, the amazing returning Justin Sullivan is back on the show. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Jesse.
Man, it's been at least 6 months since we've seen each other.
Yeah, a lot has transpired over that time.
A lot has, man, and that's why I wanted to get you back on the show. I think you have a lot to offer the listeners, and just want to dive right into our world. So I don't get a chance to talk about this much on the show because there's a lot of different people to have on, but wealth management, finance, those are things that are near and dear to my heart and how I serve my clients, and the same thing for you. So just wanted to talk about what's going on in your world of wealth management and financial planning.
Yeah. So kind of from two angles. So I recently got promoted, and thank you. I'm a manager of individuals now, as well as a planner, investment advisor, professional. Yep. So a lot of what I've been developing skill-wise over the last few months has been in the leadership category, and figuring out what type of leader I want to be, while still balancing servicing clients really well too. So let's go down the path of the client area. A lot of just continuing to work, especially on the investment side with people. But like you and I were talking about, also reflecting about doing some work for people that are really in need too. So I've been kind of tinkering with the pro bono, kind of assisting people.
What would that look like for you? I know we touched on it really quick, but just to kind of share with everyone doing the pro bono side, how would that work?
Yeah, so there's a lot of responsibility and care that is required in the pro bono space. So basically, you're helping people that are in need, people like in your community, whether they come to a financial planning organization, or it could be fed in through like a church or any area of nonprofit. But you're helping people primarily with a few basic things. Budget, that's the biggest thing for people, just how much is coming in versus how much is going out. Credit is a big piece of it as well. A lot of people just needing assistance. And the big thing is just keeping in mind, many of these people really do want help, and they just don't know where to get it or how to do it. Yep. But with the pro bono work, you're kind of doing everything leading them up to taking action on their own. So I don't go out and develop this fancy plan and say you need this insurance policy and these investments. You're just, here's what you need to do in this order, and like
an overall planning theme, like versus product centric or service centric. It's like these are the best practices for foundation of cash flow and reduction or elimination of debt, and then this is how we kind of take the next few steps, something like that.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like it's the right thing to do. There's so many people that really need help, and I think the advent of like social media makes things worse, because people are believing that people are really living these lavish lives that may or may not be true.
These gurus that are on the beach making millions of dollars.
Yeah, I like seeing those memes out there when someone's like laying on like a heap of sand somewhere in like a parking lot with like sunglasses and like taking a picture the right way.
Completely faking it.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it is. So, but there's a lot of people that are like living paycheck to paycheck. I think one of the statistics out there is most Americans could not sustain a financial hit of like $400 or $500.
Yep.
And that would totally throw them off.
Yep.
I want to help with that. I can't always be helping with like the wealthy people. I really want to help.
I think it's 61% of Americans don't have enough funds to cover a $1,000 emergency.
Yeah.
And that's really rough. And it's interesting that you're saying these things about cash flow and debt and all these things, because when you go to there's some financial planners out there that don't talk about these things. They want to look at the retirement planning or the wealth plan. They don't want to look at the building blocks that help people go from, and they may be doing well, but they can do better if they had some financial planning advice at the right time. And it's interesting that you say that, because after we jump off the show, I'll show you I'm working on an ebook that I'm going to deliver for free that has most of everything you've talked about. It's like we're like synchronized in this kind of conversation. And I'm halfway through like the first chapter, and I'm going to give out this probably 50, 60 page ebook that talks about budgeting 101 and credit management. And it's geared towards business owners, because that's kind of my target market is entrepreneurs. But it's interesting that we're thinking some of the same things. So it's good to hear that. Yeah,
well, I think we both do a really good job on the professional side of what we do, but it does leave a gap in the fulfillment of our careers and what we do. And you get those phone calls from family or friends, and just, hey, could you tell me about a stock I should buy, like I'm thinking about? And it's like, okay, we got to go. Like, yes, I could, but like let's get like really
get to the root.
So we've got to like do some education around here too, because I don't want to mislead anyone. And it could be someone who's behind on their utility bills, but they want to talk about like, hey, is there a stock? Because psychologically, they're like, how can I get out of it? Like, is there a magic pill? Is there a stock I could buy that would get me 400% in 1 month? And it's just like, well, we need to help, and I think it'll help society overall. Is like what we ought to do. It's just the right thing to do.
Over the last 12 to maybe 18 months, I've had a lot of conversations or questions from friends and family that have fielded similar to that about what marijuana company would be good to invest in right now, because that's kind of like a big thing that's coming to fruition. So it's interesting. But so we talk about clients and we talk about managing expectations, and really we're coaches and leaders for these clients on how to get from where they are, and maybe they don't even know where they are, to where they want to be, right? And so I think a lot of that is behavioral finance, like we talked about. So what are some of the things that you're discussing, learning, talking about with your clients when it comes to behavioral?
Yes, that's such a good segue. So there's a book I'm reading right now. I think it's called The Behavioral Investor, and I can't think of the author, but we'll put that in the notes.
Show notes, yeah.
And one thing that stood out to me is just I think the way he puts it is human nature is to react, but the markets tend to reward inaction.
Sure.
So in other words,
it's
better to stay the course. And I think and I experience this all the time with clients, when there's a big drop in the market on a single day, our nature is to believe that something's broken and we've got to fix it, and we got to get out and change it and adjust. And in most cases, that is not true. Like, we need to stay the course, and we will be rewarded with an emphasis on over time. So that's the other part. We always speak about investments, but we don't normally define the expected time frame. So as you put it, managing expectations is big. The other thing that really stands out is when it comes to investing, we just have such big expectations that things are going to happen for us overnight.
Sure.
And they're not. And there's a point I'm trying to get to here that I'm going to have to come back to, but it's also in this book that really stands out. And here it is. Geez. I hope
it'll come back.
This is out, but it'll come back to me. Anyway, I'll come back to the behavioral investment.
That's fine. So I think behavioral is important because most people are emotional investors. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to find really shrewd, really pragmatic, because that's just not how people live their lives. And so we have to be that barometer, that guiding light, if you will, of let me handle the emotional side of it. Mm-hmm. Let me take away the stress, because that's my job. My job is to provide clarity and take away stress and the overwhelming feeling of financial planning, because most people, they don't have the time, the knowledge, or the interest. They're smart people, they're educated, but they're focused on other things. Family, career, other things outside of finance. And so when I take on a new client, if they're referred to me or if I seek them out myself, I want to make sure that I'm a good fit for them, and vice versa. I want to bring in a client that I'm going to be happy with for years, and likewise for them. So what we do here is we do a couple things for onboarding for behavioral finance, is a couple personality gauges. One of them is called the Colby. It's Kathy Colby put this together as an assessment that helps me understand how the client takes action. They could be a quick start, they could be a fact finder. There's a few different categories they would be in. And it helps me coach them to act or to stay the course. Mm-hmm. And it's really helpful for them because they have that guiding light that knows them a little bit more than just, some sort of random, there's these risk tolerance tools out there that I've seen some of them are atrocious, some of them are good. One of them that's really good is Riskalyze. I like Riskalyze, but there's some that are just paper-based that say, well, you fall into this category. Well, we have to go deeper than just a number in a category. Right. So if you can know the person, that's one way to do it. And then the other thing I do is a personality assessment to see what type of person they are. And so now I know what type of person they are, how they take action. I can lead them a lot better with behavioral finance.
Now, do you share with them what your traits are, like as you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does that
I've actually had conversations with clients, and I've said, hey, I might not be the best fit for you, and I have a partner that I can refer to. So that might be something that has a conversation. It's happened a couple times, because at the end of the day, I want them happy, and I want to be happy too. Like the business I've chosen to run, I want to make sure that it's something that I can wake up with every morning with kind of a smile on my face and look forward to going into work, versus like, well, I don't know if this client likes me or if I don't like this client kind of thing. And
Yeah, because I think in our space especially, it's almost like when you think about buying a car and just the nature of car dealerships, it's almost like adversarial. Like you go in there either believing like I'm going to get hosed or I'm going to stick it to them this time.
Yep.
And I think that happens in our space too. Like I'm going to hold them accountable. I want to know every single detail. I want to know returns. I want to know every fee that's going. And those things are reasonable things to know and understand. But you're right. I think that personality match. It's like you do want to wake up happy and not full of adversity with the people you're trying to help.
I agree.
The thought that I was mentioning about this book came back to me finally. And I don't lose it again. But the thing is, with markets, we tend to invest, so the basic level of information about investing is buy low and sell high.
Yep.
But research shows consistently that people put money in the markets like at the worst times because it feels comfortable and it feels good. Like, oh, the market's at an all-time high. I should get in right now. Oh my gosh, this is great. Things are good. And we're looking at the market to determine and tell us like, oh, things are good now. It's time to get in, when it's the exact opposite. And then when markets are declining and full of turbulence, no, now's not. I just want to wait for things to settle down. This just isn't a good time to get in. And it's the exact time to get in because this is when things are low. This is what we want to do. So that just is the perfect example of how we are flawed. Like it really requires, and even as an investor myself, dealing with my own money, it's tempting to fall down those traps. And that's just that's probably the biggest one, buying at the wrong times.
Yep.
But it's full of traps, and to your point, like that's what you hire us for, to deal with that. We've studied the flaws of the human brain and how it relates to this. We know how you feel about risk and about loss, and we've designed it in such a way to give you the smoothest ride that we can.
I think that it's a point well put. It brings together the kind of the analytical with the emotional, right? So we know the analytical side, but we also have to be well versed on the emotional side too. And for people that see the markets declining, if they're not well versed on the analytical or the market history or trends, they would get scared. Mm-hmm. They would say, "Oh my goodness!" But on our side, not that we're rooting it on, but we're kind of excited because this is something where you get things on a discount, so to speak, and
Mm-hmm.
you can invest in things and you can buy low, which is definitely better than buying high. And so people need that coaching, they need that leadership, and they need that confidence. And sometimes there's tough conversations. Sometimes it's you definitely want to be on the same page and you want them to know that you respect them and understand their goals. But sometimes there's a conversation that say this may not be the best move for you right now. And having that conversation is what separates good from great. Because sometimes people are afraid to have those conversations because it is human nature to want to avoid controversy or want to avoid any kind of disruption in the harmony of life. So if we can get on the other side of that and say, let's have a conversation and this is how it's going to better you and your goals and your legacy for whatever you're trying to accomplish, it benefits them much more than not having that conversation.
Yeah, I did an event. I was a panelist at this event at UGA, University of Georgia, and maybe there were 8 other panelists there with me. And as we went down the line and went through our background, I think 4 or 5 of us had backgrounds in psychology. And that really brought it to, I'd always known that. I always feel like a part of my job is related to that. And my background is not in psychology. But I think more and more people are realizing like it has so much more to do about navigating this this pathway of wealth creation that is full of volatility, and if you just stay in and follow some basic rules, you'll probably have a decent experience.
What are your thoughts on kind of staying within financial planning, wealth management, and economics? What are your thoughts on the state of technology and adoption from planners and how that's working out in the real world? Because I've seen a couple different things. I'm just interested to hear kind of where your thoughts are with where we're going, and is it for the better, and how do we make it better for the client?
Yeah, I think a lot of us have, by definition, there's an average person. There's that person with average wealth and just kind of a general situation. And it's kind of like taxes. I think taxes are a good example. Like, is TurboTax and all that kind of stuff bad? No, it's not bad. I mean, if you've got a pretty basic scenario, why wouldn't you use it? It's easy to use. I think in the financial planning space and the investment field, the same thing. Like, if you've got a really basic, just kind of standard and you've got a good understanding of how these things work, I don't think there's really anything wrong with kind of the automation and things. But the next level from there is to work with a person. And some people just have a preference to where I want to work with a person.
Yep.
I want to talk things through, and I want to have confidence in what I'm doing and know that no one's falling asleep behind the wheel. Someone's kind of got their hand on this.
Yep.
But probably the best combination is the person and the technology, and just leveraging those tools together. If you go to work with a planner and they pull out a notebook and want to write a plan from scratch, I mean, it's going to take a longer period of time.
Yep.
There's room for errors and mistakes, and so I think having a human brain plus the advancement of technology is probably the best thing you can.
I agree, and and you've been in this industry for years. You know that there's always some groupthink amongst a portion of planners that technology is going to take over.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I was in banking for years. That's where we met, and that was the same thing then too. That the branch was gonna go away, and
Mm-hmm.
people that were in the branches were going to be displaced. Meaning, like the tellers and the bankers and the managers. But there's always that need for that human touch. And even more so, I mean, yes, it's important to have technology. And so I'm, 37 years old, so I'm a huge advocate for technology in my business, and it helps. It's an amazing tool, but it has to come down to that personal relationship and that personal skill and experience to be married with that together and to be in cohesion. So I think they say, statistics, for what they're worth, sometimes they're on point, sometimes they're not, right? But they say that the average financial planner is 57, 58 years old, and a lot of folks that are moving towards that season of life, they're at a position where maybe their books have been built, or maybe they're content with their business, and so maybe they're not adopting. Some may be adopting new technologies and ideas, but maybe some aren't. And so I think that it's on people like us to at least give our clients that opportunity to have the best of both worlds. And
it had some healthy competition. So for those who are concerned about like job security and just the nature of the industry, well, you're going to have to become better.
Yeah.
You're going to have to become better.
Adapt or die. Evolve.
Adapt or die, exactly. And so I always try to look at it that way.
It's smart. I think that's the wave of the future. I've tried to come up with some solutions because I'm an entrepreneur at heart, so solving problems is big for me. But is there a way, and I've kind of identified there is, but is there a way to marry the two together and take away the fear from the financial planner side they're going to be displaced? So with technology, instead of looking at it as an adversary, it's an absolute must in your business. You have to have it to some level, and there's some pretty unique tools out there that you can use to make the experience better for you and for your client.
Right.
So I'm a huge advocate for that. Switching gears a little bit, I know that we were talking about it's back on for what season is Game of Thrones in now?
Season 8.
Season 8.
Yeah.
And you're a huge Game of Thrones fan.
Yeah.
I got into it for like the first season or two. For some reason, I just fell off. So I got to get back into it. But I know you're big into the podcast as well.
Yeah. So there's first of all, that happened to me. The first season I watched, I wasn't like really into it.
You didn't see what the big thing was.
Yeah, somebody convinced me to give it another try, and I don't know what happened that second round, but it clicked. And I've got some shows out there too that everyone's. I think Narcos is one of them.
Narcos, yeah.
Gotta love it. And first season, so maybe I need to give that another try too. But yeah, I do listen to a podcast that's like a Game of Thrones podcast, and basically. They're really long too, which I love because you watch this episode, you've got all this we want to unpack, and there's like a 2-hour podcast that you can listen to with theories and thoughts and reactions. So I do like that one a lot. That's what I've been listening to.
What are some of the things? Are they doing almost a play-by-play of the whole episode, and then thoughts and maybe some Easter egg type stuff, or?
Yeah, so they do a good job. I think they have a separate podcast that they may or may not include spoilers, so you they also tie it into the book. I did not read the books, but they'll go through like play by play, character by character, different themes, because this is the last season, so there's a lot at stake.
Series finale.
So just kind of what's going to happen. Game of Thrones is notorious for people dying. I mean, in the first season, there's
the king had his head chopped off. I remember.
Yeah. So that was like a moment in TV where we're like, wait, what? This is. Every era of TV, every TV show I've ever watched in life always was wrapped up with a happy ending. What are they doing? They're breaking the rules. I don't like this.
Which is good.
Yeah, it was. Like at first you're like, I don't like this, and you're like, this is refreshing.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
It's a good spin on things. So you're big on the podcast and this kind of follow-up, kind of recap of it. what are some other things that you're into? So I think it was Gladiator, which is more of like a bio kind of Aaron Hernandez for the Patriots.
So someone suggested that one to me. I think it's maybe only 6 or 7 episodes on this podcast about Aaron Hernandez. Goes through his life as a child, through football, through jail, and through his death, and even some commentary afterwards. And it was really good. I mean, it was just hearing about him. I mean, I take the stance because I've had a lot of trauma kind of happen with me and with family members and stuff, and I think every story is like worthy of being heard, whether you're a monster or not. Like at some point you were an innocent baby, like you just were, and things occurred during that time, and I like to hear about those stories. And so a lot of them are pretty common themes. So fatherhood, he had a very abusive father, and one of these things where you might think abusive father, like, oh, they come in drunk and beat up the kids and stuff, but I do think some of that happened too. But a lot of it was like you came home with a C on your report card, and these kids were getting not just a typical like rough talk, or it wasn't discipline oriented. It was like abuse,
super abuse driven. So yeah, I mean, his story is one that definitely needed to be shared, and I'm glad it was. Outside the fact that I am from New England, I'm from Boston, and I'm a huge Patriots fan. A lot of these things were kind of, I wouldn't say commonplace, but you heard a lot of these things before the culmination of what he did and the crimes he was accused of, and then him unfortunately committing suicide. Like, there was a lot for his background, and I think that what you just pointed out with stories need to be told. Everyone has a story, and you never know what piece of someone's life is going to resonate with somebody else, whether it's food for thought, whether it helps them change a bad habit, whether it helps them go in a different direction in their life for the better. I think everybody has a story to tell, and for him, like you said, he came into this world innocent. You'd like to think that all people that when they're first born, they're innocent, and it's like the path that is unfolded for them as they go forward. And when you have a rough upbringing, it really makes it difficult. The odds are stacked against you to be able to go out and be productive or be a good human being. And so it was rough because it looked like he kind of got away from outside, like getting too deep into his personal life. From the outside looking in, it looked like he was doing great. He was an all-star tight end with the Patriots. He was doing really well, but his past really never left him, and he could never really get away from his past.
And that's tough because he had this abusive situation, and not all the trauma. Not all of the trauma has to be like a bad thing. It doesn't have to include abuse, because part of it was like this skill and this gift, but also that comes with like fame and kind of feeds this ground for ego and all this other stuff. So he's got that. Then his dad dies, and I know that probably seems weird to think like abusive, like, well, good riddance, but that's still your father. And so there's just so many different things that happen to him, and so he's going through the system. Football is going really well for him. He's like smoking pot all the time before. I don't even know how people function like that. I mean, like, how could you do that? But so he's doing all this stuff.
Some people consider it a performance enhancer, believe it or not. There's certain like, especially I'm big into the UFC and big into Joe Rogan, and he's a huge advocate for his personal use and other people's use of it's a plant, and it's becoming more of a mainstream thing, like we just talked about. Companies are able to sell it now and market it, and the government's easing up on it. So I think that there's some benefit to it, but then there's also that time where people just get too high, and how could you perform?
Well, there's like the two, from what I understand of this, there's like the THC side, which is like the psycho side of it, where people get high, and then there's the CBD, which is like full of all these health benefits. So
medicinal.
So I'm glad that we're at an age where like we're splitting these things apart and not lumping it all into one.
It's not taboo anymore. Now let's look at this benefit of what we can use from it.
Right. Yeah. For someone who's like high, I mean, I would think you'd be sleepy. You wouldn't be wanting to run up and down a field. My goodness.
I'm sure there's different strands and different variations that give you different feelings. But you would think that maybe you wouldn't be at your best. But some people, they need that.
It's almost more of it's more impressive that he was able to thrive and do all that. So he's doing this stuff, but then like one of the big issues is the contact football, and it's a shame that this is kind of becoming a controversial topic, but like football is a rough sport, and people's brains are being scrambled every day, and that's why I call it Gladiator, because in a way it is like watching a gladiator,
modern age gladiator.
We're watching it, and I think things are improving with the technology of the helmets and the science behind it. But anyway, the bigger picture with this podcast is not being able to leave that life behind. I think one of the biggest problems for him was becoming a patriot, like being right in his backyard. Where I think if he had gone with the Raiders or somebody, he'd be just far away from all of it. But the streets, he couldn't shake off, and they weren't shaking him off either.
That's right.
They would be like threatening him,
pull him back
his
in,
family, and pull him back in. So, allegedly he kills someone, he ends up in jail. And he ends up killing himself, and it just wraps up. The podcast wraps up with like the scientific discussion around what was the
CTE.
CTE.
Yeah.
So I thought it's a good listen. There's so much more behind it, but even if you don't have any connection to Aaron Hernandez or not, it's just like a decent story to listen.
It's amazing. They've done a lot of studies on the human brain. A lot of them, post death, where they've seen how the brain was affected, even neurologically, like what it's done. And there was I think it was a 30 for 30, if I recall correctly, on Junior Seau. And ESPN did this beautiful, basically like kind of a biopic documentary, and it showed how it affects your day to day, and like how it causes depression, and like you get these suicidal thoughts. And so there is a part of me who, I believe in contact sports, and I've done martial arts for years, but there's also a level of like, let's keep it safe, right, as much as we can. And so with football, they've done a better job, but they still have a lot of work to do, because these guys are putting their bodies and their minds and their livelihood on the line, their life's on the line. So I think it's really important to have those discussions, to see kind of what the science is telling us, and to use both, right? To use our hearts and minds to be able to have a safer sport, to have a safer life. And then, maybe things like this will dissipate altogether. If we can find a way around it, maybe we won't have people that become depressed or suicidal from it. So definitely a lot to talk about there. I'm excited to check that out. I'm a big believer in podcast, audiobooks, so that's next on my list.
Yeah, you'll like this one.
Yeah, definitely going to check that out. So last time you came on the show, you went to Italy, and you did all these cool things, and it was an amazing experience for you. But since then, you've been on another big trip. So South Africa.
Yeah, I went to South Africa with some friends in March, and again, this was just it wasn't necessarily on the radar, but found a good flight deal. And I mean, that's half the battle with traveling, especially when you go places that are inexpensive once you get there. So if you see the ticket and you're like, man.
Did you use that Scott's Flights for this one?
Yeah, I did.
Whatever it was? Yeah,
I did.
Awesome.
So got a really affordable flight to South Africa. I had a 24-hour layover in London, which was great because you get on the same time zone as South Africa.
Nice.
You get to lay down in a hotel and a bed and kind of
get ready
recover
for the trip
from a long flight.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's kind of like, I guess, 9 or 10 hours to London, and then about the same amount of time to go down to Johannesburg. So it was a long flight, my goodness. But
anything doing in London while you were there? Any like good restaurants that you popped into, or?
Yes, I can't think of the name of the restaurant. We'll put that in the show notes too. But it was a really good one. It's like a really classy looking place. Went there for breakfast, but
Nice.
it was a weekday, so it was like a lot of business people there.
Yep.
Nice silverware, great service.
You were in your element.
Really, but I was in casual clothes, so I was actually really up. I'm like, I'm supposed to be in the city.
Right.
So, but it was.
You should see me on my Monday through Friday.
That's what I felt in my head. It was like a horrible thought, but I'm like, yeah, if you guys knew who I really was,
Right.
I'm normally the guy in the suit. But meanwhile, I'm in like a sweatshirt or whatever. And just
Listen, but you still had a good time, still had a little bit of the culture, and then you took right back off and went to South Africa.
Yeah, I did the bus tour, actually, like the cheesy
While you were
kind
in
of red
London?
bus. Yeah, because
Okay.
that was actually a really efficient way to just see a few sites and get back on the plane.
Do they still have the double-decker buses? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So I did the double decker, and it was just cool to ride around London.
Nice.
And get to South Africa, Johannesburg was the first stop, and then next day go to do safari.
What was the safari like?
It was amazing. I mean, you get to the lodge. You normally stay in a lodge, which means like kind of gated, almost like a campsite, like a nice campsite if you're a kid, with like a shared building for meals and a bar. And they don't have a bar at camps, unless the kind of camps you went to, they probably did. But
the only kind of camp I want to go to.
So it's like that, and you've got like your building and everything. But you get there. mean, it was right on a river. There was a hippo in the river as soon as I get there, like on the lodge.
I don't know if
property.
this is true, but I've hered that hippos are responsible for more deaths than like any other animal in the Africa, South.
Yeah. They are.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I was concerned, and it was loud. I mean,
They're
it
huge,
was just
right? They're just giant.
Yeah, they're huge. It's keeping you up all night because it's just like in the water, like making all these noises and stuff. And I'm just constly wondering, like,
did it have access to your camp? Like,
yes, it was right. It like was on the campgrounds. I mean, hippos, wildebeest, giraffe. They were all in the lodge.
Wow.
Like,
So you were living amongst the
just,
animals
yes.
in their environment.
Yes.
Wow.
And thankfully, there weren't many mosquitoes. I don't remember. Like, they did stress out the spraying and everything, and I had to take the malaria pills and stuff. But next day, went out, saw elephants, saw basically. Here's how I would explain it. Like, I thought going to a safari, animals would be very scarce. Like, you'd be lucky if you see anything, so just keep your eyes out. But it was not that way. I mean, you see zebra and gazelle, like, is nobody. They're just out there. They're very abundant, like just all over the place. You can't not see them. Then kind of second tier, I'd say elephant and giraffe were pretty, like, every 30, 40 minutes you run into one of them.
Did you see any giant elephants or giant, like, just like took your breath away? They were so big.
Oh yeah, and got really close to them too. They're kind of shy. Like they'll like turn around or like turn their back towards you. The giraffe were just so tall, so just beautiful.
Are they more inquisitive? Like, will they interact a little bit more with the giraffe, or are they still standoffish?
I was hoping they'd be more interactive. Like, I feel like I've seen that out there somewhere, like the hotel where but these giraffe were like real wild giraffe. They're like, no, we're not.
They're afraid
involved in that. But one cool fact that came out is the giraffes. They're eating these plants, and these plants have these huge thorns, like as a way to protect themselves. But additionally, the trees have learned how to pump tannins into the leaves to dry out the mouth of the giraffe.
Wow.
And what's even more fascinating is it's believed that the trees can communicate with each other to, like, if the wind blows, they somehow send a signal to tell the other trees to pump those tannins up.
That's incredible.
What they say is giraffe, you'll always see them heading, I guess, against the wind.
Okay, that's to not pick up the scent.
So that the tree. So that's I'm fascinated by science in that way.
And that's something that's been studied or documented to some level.
The tannins, for sure, just the tannins being pumped in, that's a fact. But the talking to each other thing, I think, is still.
That's incredible. Like, just the things that we still don't know, the faintest clue of like how the world operates, and some of these things that are in nature and these defense. It's evolution.
It is,
right? I mean,
is.
You see all these evolutionary markers in different animals of defense or offense to survive, and to even know that these things exist. Like, what else don't we know is out there? It's super cool, man.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me started on the oceans. I'm a science person.
Listen,
there's so much we don't know.
Let's talk about it.
There's so much we don't know.
It's like space within our universe.
Yeah.
We don't know half of what's going on down there, and there's always new species being found all the time.
Yep.
And there's certain things that we can't get to, and who knows what's moving around down there that we just haven't found yet.
And the age of some of these creatures too. I mean, elephants, whales, I mean, they live 40, 50, 60. I mean, I remember asking the tour guide, like, he's like, oh, this elephant's 30-something years old. I'm like, we could have been born on the same year. Like,
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, I mean, they're just out there living their whole life.
And they're known for their memory, too. So it's like one of those things where not only are they living a long time, but they have a lot of, like, data that they've stored up. And, like, they're highly intelligent animals. I mean, I'm right there with you. I grew up watching all these different, like, Animal Planet and all these different things. Like, my dad and I were huge into Shark Week, so we watched Shark Week for, like, the last 26, 27 years. Like, two of my 7th and 8th grade projects, or 6th and 7th grade projects, were on sharks, great white sharks.
Nice.
And I went to this Catholic school where, like, we had, like, the same kind of teachers, like, throughout the years. And so when I got to 8th grade, they were like, you can't do sharks again.
Like, enough.
So I did tornadoes, which was cool. But it's incredible that there's so much in the world that we're just still learning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So are you into any of that stuff? Do you watch any of those shows when they come on at all?
I do. I watch
Discovery.
Earth.
Okay,
Earth. I mean, just beautifully
done. That's on Netflix, right?
That's on Netflix.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Beautifully done. So perfect. So the safari was amazing. Didn't see any rhino. They're very rare.
Okay.
In fact, they get poached.
Are they endangered?
They're endangered. They get poached. I learned a good bit about that situation too. So I'm like, who's letting this happen?
Yeah.
But they say it's like normally an inside job, and
some
it's
inside
real
information,
sad.
so to speak, and like they
Inside-
let them know where they found them and like send a team out
Yeah,
there.
so like there's a chart when you go into Kruger National Park where I was, and people will tip off kind of where you see animals, but
Okay.
you're not allowed to tip off where you see a rhino because they get poached. But I think also from a you've got wealthy people that are like, look, we're going to come use this land, like we'll give you some money too, and then
Yep.
so it's kind of
Big
like a
game
trade-off.
hunters kind of people.
Yeah. So
That's sad that that's out there.
It is.
So, but also, good segue kind of while you're in South Africa, what you love to do, you always love to go and travel and bring back a piece of that culture. And one of the best ways to do that is through cooking. And so,
Oh, yeah.
so did you get a chance to learn some of their cuisine or bring back some of their cuisine with you?
Yeah, so I guess a little bit of both. Did a cooking class. You can find these things easily. What's the name of that thing? There's an app called Viator, Viator, I
Okay.
think. And there's also Airbnb now does not just places to stay, but
Smart.
activities too.
Yep.
They're really smart.
Yep.
And those are good because they screen them pretty well. Like they don't allow ordinary experiences on Airbnb. They've got to be like somewhat unique. So I forget which one of those two I found this cooking class, but did it. Really nice lady, just learned this authentic. It was like in her home. Nice lady.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, it was perfect, and just kind of had some wine, made some food. The dish we made was called chakalaka.
Okay.
And it's basically shredded carrots. You start with a base, so like oil in the pan,
Yeah.
and then like some peppers, onions, like just diced up. Then shredded carrots, that goes in there. There's some beans that go in there.
Okay.
And just a bunch
Like
of
a
different
vegetarian
seasonings.
kind of
Yeah,
dish?
it's like a
Yeah.
vegetarian dish, and it
Nice.
was nice because we'll talk about health and wellness later. But
Yeah.
like you try to be healthy, and it's not all that rewarding.
Especially when you travel.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Because when you travel, a lot of times you're out of your element, you're not in your groove. Like at home, you can meal prep if you're into that, or you can plan for the day. When you're traveling, you're just like, I'm hungry. I need to eat.
Yeah. And anything you can do to build some excitement around a vegetable, especially a carrot. Ugh.
How was the meal when it got done?
It was really good.
Yeah?
It was really good. Now we also had some unhealthy things too. They have their version of like dumpling, like a fried, like a donut,
nice.
basically,
Yeah.
like a non-sweetened donut.
Yeah.
That was really good, and some other items too. But I did bring back some jerky. So like
Oh, really?
wildebeest jerky,
Okay.
ostrich.
Get it through
Jerky.
customs, they check it off.
Yeah,
you're good to
that
go.
was
Yeah.
easy to bring through. But what I should have gotten is this stuff called biltong,
Biltong.
and that's their version of. It is similar to jerky, but it's more moist.
Okay.
There's
Better
a restaurant-
flavor or something, or just
Yeah,
easier
there's
to
a
eat?
restaurant in Atlanta called Biltong Bar. We'll have
Okay.
to check out
Yeah,
sometime.
dude.
They have it there in South Africa, and it's kind of moist.
So you're able to take back some of the culture, some of the cuisine, and so South Africa, you also got a really large piece of their history too.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been. It's kind of hard to be an American and not grow up with this like heart towards Martin Luther King and what he did in the
Sure.
civil rights movement. I mean, it's just like peace. Like how could you be so peaceful in the face of all this hatred?
Just being
And
a
that's
better
just-
human for everybody.
Yeah, and it's just so moving. And I kind of known a little about apartheid and Nelson Mandela, but the story is just so similar, and the nonviolent approach, and just in spending forever in jail. I mean, he was in
30
solitary
years.
confinement. Yeah,
Right.
30 years in jail, and just being disconnected from his wife and his family. And
But I heard, and I don't mean to cut you
Mhm.
off. I heard that there is there was like a brotherhood, and maybe you told me this. I don't know. I heard this somewhere. There was like a brotherhood. Speak to this. Like they were like
Yeah.
the letters. They would like join in on the letters they would receive. And,
yeah, you got to remember, these were political prisoners, so they weren't like violent people. So a lot of what was happening was screening around their letters. So they would try to write in code. They would try to do whatever they could. But once it got to the jail, or before it left the jail, it was being screened and words cut out and marked out and all this stuff, because they were concerned that there would be some sort of revolt. These were political prisoners. But there was a family, and that they would really support each other. Those prisoners would have each other's back and just be there for each other, because all that time in jail, people are dying.
Yep.
A lot of the spouses were just needed to move on and remarried and all this other stuff. So
And they're left with these things stuck in a place
Yeah.
where they can't really act. They have to just take it.
they have to just take it.
Yeah.
I mean, prison is just one of the worst things. Freedom. I'll rephrase that. Freedom is just one of the most important things to me.
Yeah,
It just
I
I
agree.
could not imagine not being free. And so there's more. You could go on forever. In fact, there's a Nelson Mandela museum that we went to and stuff, and you really could spend hours there. But just, I know you're big into these kind of like turnaround stories, to go from that and to be imprisoned. And what happened was the president at the time got sick, and so his vice president stepped in. And all along, where people didn't really know, the vice president had been having conversations with Nelson Mandela. The vice president of South Africa was actually pro getting rid of apartheid, and so during this moment where he was interim president, he made a major decision to end apartheid.
Wow. And
Nelson Mandela was freed. And the ironic part is, when the phone call came in, or the letter, I'm not sure how it went down, telling Nelson Mandela, like, hey, we're ending this, you're freed. Nelson Mandela says, well, no, not yet. Like, I have to stay here. I have to, like, tie up my affairs.
Isn't that incredible?
First. I mean, could you, I would be
I'm
on
the door.
first moment I could get out. And he's like, no, I have to, I don't know.
Like smoke behind my feet, running. Like, get me out of here.
Go on. So, yes. Powerful guy.
But it was a transcendent moment. I mean, you get to see there are people that have come in through the ages that have completely transcended just how we are as human beings, and for the better. I mean, and this is something that it almost seems like common sense in a way, that you should just be a good human and treat people the way that they should be treated. But there's just so many old school doctrinations of how things used to be and how people live, and it's just to have these leaders, and we talked about a little bit of this, like we talked about Leonidas and 300 a little bit, where you have these people that are ready to die on their shield, and they'll die for their people, and they'll lead from the front. Like, they'll go out and they'll take the negative press, right? They'll take the heat, they'll take the backlash, but because they believe and they know in their heart what they're doing is right, they do it anyway. So
yeah. I think to die for a cause that where you may not or probably will not see the result of it is one of the most, like, powerful things
noble,
in this
saintly,
world. It just is. And same thing with being imprisoned for it too, and giving up your life for this cause is just moving.
Testament to the human spirit, man, and just what we can do if we have our hearts in the right place.
That's true.
So the epic journey to South Africa, you get back to the United States, and your focus is on health and wellness these days.
Yeah.
So where are you at with that?
So one of my best friends and his family, and they're really like family to me, they father does this kind of like family meeting thing periodically, maybe once a quarter or a couple times a year, with different topics. One of them was about stress management and just kind of how to handle yourself in those situations. But the one they did most recently, and they had invited me to, was about just health and wellness. So again, science seems to be the theme we're talking about.
You got the invite, which is
yeah. No, they're
that's like you're part of the family.
Well, I'll tell you what. I went and did a one of these a mud run with them maybe last year. Okay. And they saw how angry I was, but I was not a happy camper, so maybe they were just trying to I don't know, pick on me a little more about that, because I got a love-hate with the health and wellness stuff, especially fitness side of things. But learning about the science with diet, it's like, yes, there is a part of it that there's things we all know to do: eat more vegetables, drink more water, avoid junk food. Like, there's things we know, but there is another layer. In fact, there's a few layers behind it that you can get really granular. I don't have an interest in getting too granular. I think that is saved for kind of like the marathon, or like those who really need their body to perform, dialed in. Time of day, like down to the minute when like, I'm not at that level, but I really just learned a lot. And the one thing that jumped out the most was about serving size with food. And I mean, it is something we probably all know, but we just look the other way. So we, whether it's something healthy or not, it could be a protein bar, or it could be low fat fat free dressing or yogurt and stuff, and we're like, oh, this must be healthy. Like, we just buy into that first marketing pitch and start consuming it. But a lot of these things we're consuming, we're having 3 and 4 servings of it in one sitting, and it just makes it really impossible to lead a healthy life where you're able to avoid and prevent disease and obesity and just all these struggles that we're facing. It bothers me that message is not more widespread, and especially to the least of these in society, where we're just planting the fast food things, just plugging away with the marketing for these things that just are killing us.
It's confusing on purpose. Like we talked about a lot of times on cereal boxes, if they want to promote protein, they'll have like this huge image of X amount of grams of protein. So you just see protein. You're like, oh, I can get a good source of protein there. Well, are you getting that much protein per serving?
Right.
What does a serving look like you talked about? And what quality of protein is that? What is it? Is it garbage? Is it going to mess up your body, or is it actually decent protein? Most likely, it's probably not. It's in cereal. So, not to say there's not good proteins in cereal, but you can get better proteins elsewhere. So, I think that for me, in talking about nutrition, a lot of it is fundamentals. Like, get solid sleep every night. Mm-hmm. Don't trash your body with alcohol. Right? Don't eat junk food as much as you probably were. If you can do anything, drink more water every day.
Yep.
Right? And so I'm really big into similar mindset of, I don't want to have like a specific time that I do this or a specific amount that I do. That's just too much for me. I don't want to get in the weeds that much. But for me, I have things that are on autopilot. Like I intermittent fast every day. So I only eat 8 hours a day, and what that does is it helps repair your digestive tract so that you're healthier, because your immunity and how you feel is based in your gut.
Right.
And so for me, I learned that a long time ago, and it helps me if I want to cut weight, I can cut weight. But if I'm eating from, let's say, 1 o'clock to 9 o'clock every day, I'm giving my body 16 hours to repair itself and to feel better. And for me, it's easy because I'm not a breakfast person anyway. I mean, I love breakfast, I'll eat it for dinner, but I don't have to have it when I first wake up. So I think knowing your body, knowing the things, I'm really susceptible to breads, pastas, growing up Italian, so those things are really attractive to me. So maybe cutting back on those things and focusing more on, like you said, vegetables, lean meats. Where are these meats coming from? Are they grass-fed? Are they truly organic? Like, so just making better choices more often is a huge part of it.
Yeah, what you said about autopilot is really key. So it's like you get all this information, and then how do you apply it? So normally what's going to happen, and at least in my experience, is week 1, you're a total advocate for it. I've learned this information, I'm going to be perfect. Week 2, especially after that weekend happened, and you had those wings and pizza, and so you're like, I messed up. Then it's like, well, maybe, and I think it can go down to a point where you just lose it all. And I'm a realist, I think it's not going to be at the perfect level, but I want to have a decent lifestyle. And so with what you mentioned about autopilot, packing your snacks with you, like packing a bag of vegetables, some fruits and stuff, like having it available is so key. Even if it means packing a cooler or going to work on Monday with a huge bag and just putting it in the fridge at work, like those things, you got to think about the things that are going to throw you off. Again, just speaking to myself here, and we talked about that with fitness too. Like, I know I can't go to a gym that is going to take me 30 minutes to drive to, or I have to go there in a suit and change and shower. Like, it's just
eliminate
not
that process.
Eliminate the process
the
and do what's easy, even if it's a gym you don't love, but it's right next door to your home. Like, it'll just reduce the amount of excuses that you will make for yourself.
And you bring up a good point with kind of having that mindset built in and taking away the friction. Like, I do this, my coach, my mentor, he's an independent financial planner as well. He's always talking about removing friction from clients. Like, so making sure parking is close to your building, making sure it's easy for clients to find you. Like, just if you can remove the friction, and we do that in our own lives too. And so whether it's meal planning or having those snacks, another thing too, you mentioned that you brought up a good point, is for me, I know that at a certain time of day, like usually maybe like 2 or 3, if I start to get tired, if I'm around something that's not as healthy for me, I might reach for that, because when you're tired, your mentality is weaker and you make like less better decisions. So if there's something that you can grab that's it's a little bit healthier, like just knowing yourself and knowing your process and how your body operates is huge too. Talk to me about like this new training that you're doing with the HIIT, like, or the interval training that you're working at.
Yeah, so I go to a gym now called the Lion's Den. So to the point I made earlier, I actually really do like this gym, and it happens to be close to where I live.
Nice.
So, and it's class. It's maybe 20. I'd say at most like 20, 22 people in the class.
Yep.
It's in like a gym, and we start off with a quick like 5-minute warm up. Could be like jumping jacks, push-ups. That is kind of just a quick, just to get the body moving.
Yep.
And then for the next probably 5 minutes, maybe a little longer actually, the coach is going station by station, demonstrating, explaining what we're going to do.
Nice.
So you do cool down a little bit, but you at least get to get some water and just kind of see what you're going to do. So a lot of it will be like the TRX straps type of things. There'll be there's all types of devices in there. There's a box you jump up and down on. There's like a little scooter thing that you can, like, you put your hands down and then put your feet on it and like kind of do an ab exercise that way.
Okay.
There's weights. There's like fly. The weights are are free weights. So like it's not a bunch of bulky machines in the way. So you can maneuver your way around.
Mobile.
Yeah. Everything's pretty mobile, and so it's really well thought out. I like it, and basically you can the endurance is the part that, like, in terms of results that I've been able to see, just being able to get through the class.
You started there, you said it was like a few minutes of endurance, and after that you were like kind of huffing like this is a lot, but now you've already extended 30-40 minutes in just a short amount of time.
Yeah, and it, just the consistency of going there and just putting up with it. And this is the other thing this guy talked about with the health and wellness thing. He said on the weights, you need to go heavy on the weights. And that's one thing I'm still figuring out now, because in this class, like, you do have a bunch of stations you have to hit, and the class you're basically like 45 seconds of doing something, 10, 15 second break and on to the next thing. So when you think that you've got 40 minutes ahead of you and you're at the curl station, you don't really want to pick up the heavy. You're like, oh my God, if I do this, how am I going to make it through the rest of the class? But I do, especially on like the second half of the class, I do try to it's like, if I'm going to already be kind of suffering through this thing, I better make it worthwhile. So I try to, there's no use in me just picking up something light just to get through it. But as you know, there's a balance of like doing it correctly and doing the right weights. And just because they say do it for 45 seconds, like if I choose a heavy weight, but I'm just done at second number 22, then I'll just stop.
It's good to be cognizant of like you said, form, and you don't want to get injured. I mean, you're just kind of getting back into the swing of things, and you're seeing some really good quick results, but you just got to make sure that your longevity, and that's what you're doing it for. I mean, you're doing it, obviously, there's a lot of benefits to working out, but at least for me, I want to be able to do things at 70 and 80 years old that most people can't, right? Whether it's, a quick 5K or hiking up a mountain or, playing with my grandchildren or whatever that looks like. Yes, there's the let's look good now, like let's feel good now, but it's also let's keep that going as long as we can. I don't want to be sick and ill because I didn't take care of my body.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about in the past too. It's good to have challenges in your life, and
I agree. I
think big or small, a lot of mine are work-related challenges, but I don't want to always be trapped in that realm. I want like an occasional physical challenge, like a regular physical challenge, which is at the gym. If they ever get me back to that mud run, that'll be like a random kind of high.
I'm gonna have to take you on one.
Man, you'll be finished way before me. It's really I wish they could do an express where I can just do the obstacles. It's the running that I don't really love.
Getting to the obstacles that you could do without, but the fun part of like monkey bars and
just give me like a golf cart and take me station to station. That would be perfect.
There you go. That could be a whole new concept. Maybe have a beer or two while you're doing it.
That wouldn't hurt.
So with your overall health and wellness journey, where you're at right now, where do you kind of see yourself going with it? Do you see yourself continuing your journey with this local gym that you're really enjoying, and then potentially, like you said, picking up some runs and things like that?
I got a scale, and I don't know how accurate these things are, like the body fat percentage kind of scale thing. So I got that. I'm at like 16% body fat, and so as I look at the pictures, there's one of them that they show these guys at different. The guy had like 1% body fat. I'm like, oh my God,
barely alive.
I don't know. I don't even want to get there. I think maybe like 12 to 14 look pretty good.
And that's athletic. Like that's athletic. 12. I think it's 10 to 12 or 10 to 13% is the athletic. Once you start getting below that, you go into like it's almost starvation mode. And like they say that anything below 4% body fat is dangerous for your health. So people that are at 1 to 3 or 4%, they might be prepped for a competition. They're a fitness model or they're a bodybuilder. They don't stay there forever. So it's like it's just a short amount of time. So I think much more sustainable, 10%, 15% in that window. And you're already right there. I mean, you're knocking on the door.
Yeah, and it feels good to be close enough. Like that, this is doable. It's an attainable goal, and I think it really is just going to be a matter of not screwing up so badly on the weekends. Like I tend
nutrition. Get your sleep, get your nutrition. Another thing too that's really big, and I'll get you some of these folks that I'm into, but I listen to Ben Greenfield. I listen to Aubrey Marcus and his whole On It Academy. Aaron Alexander, all these people that are like biohackers, so to speak. or people that are just optimization of the human body. I mean, the things that you can learn from, so if you're into podcasts, they all have podcasts, they're amazing. But there's some of these people like Ben Greenfield, he went ahead and I guess, over the last couple of years, there's been these test kits that come out that test your telomeres and see how old you really are, right? And so when he first did his, I think he was like 35 or 36. But because he does all these biohacking things with like infrared light supplementation, like he does all these different things, he took himself from 36 years old, from his telomeres down to 20.
Wow.
Yeah, and the things he can do with his body are incredible. So definitely, I'll get you some of those people to follow up on.
Be good to listen to.
Because in your journey, the things like even the other day, like obviously the big thing I try to look out for nowadays is like the sugar and everything. I try to minimize sugar as much as I can, as much as I have a sweet tooth. But learning about fat and how fat's actually good for you if you have the right fats. And fat's a delivery system for hormones. And for men, testosterone as we get older, that's something that comes down. So things like eating right and sleeping right. Like there's natural things that you can do for your body to help you live better now and live longer. So
yeah, that's important. Yep. And it'll only get more important over time too.
I agree. So anything for the folks on a go home message, whether it be in the financial planning space, the traveling space, podcasting, anything you want to leave for the folks?
Yeah, I think the two things we hit on that were most important, I think, is the investor psychology. It's just so big. Don't fall for I need to hit an arbitrary benchmark. The S&P did this. Just focus on your goals. Focus on what you're trying to achieve, paying down your debt. Still living a good life too, though. And just enjoying some of the money while you have it. And the exact same advice for the fitness. Make the right decisions. Try to learn more. Get that kind of righteous anger around. Like, gosh, we're fooled by some of these serving sizes and all these traps that are out there, and just kind of learn.
That's true.
But also enjoy. Like, food is one of the best things on the planet. Like, just enjoy things. And I'm a person of moderation.
That's it.
Balance.
That's it. Justin, always great having you, man.
Yeah,
he's Justin Sullivan. I'm Jesse Tedisco. Please catch us for the next episode. We'll talk to you soon. See ya.
See ya.